Hi, welcome back to Elizabeth Ann Reads. I'm Anne. Today I'm going to do the first part of my April wrap-up, so this will be about half the books that I read in April. We're not quite to the end, so I don't know exactly how many I will have read by the end of the month. But today I'm going to talk about 12, and specifically the 12 that are going to work for the Magical Readathon. If you're unfamiliar with the Magical Readathon, which I can't imagine you are, but if you are, I will link that information down below, and the G over at Book Roast is in charge of that, and so I'll link her information below. Anyway, but this is a readathon that's based off Harry Potter, and yeah, there are 12 prompts to complete, and you can complete just certain ones to get different things. Basically, I went into this month not really planning on officially participating, but maybe just picking up a few here and there, but then I ended up doing all 12. Basically, so I have the option to participate in the second part of the readathon, which happens in August. And you have to have done the first part to do the second part. And I don't know if I'm going to want to participate in August, but now I have the option if I choose to. So just, yeah, we're going to go through the 12 books that I read that meet the prompts for the Magical Readathon. So the first prompt was Ancient Runes, and that was to read a book with a heart on the cover. And for that, I read Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. Now, I don't think this is the heart that the prompt is alluding to, but those are definitely hearts on the cover, so we're counting it. This was a first-time read for me. I'd never read Frankenstein. I am familiar with the story, but I was surprised. The book was a lot different than I anticipated, and I feel like there's just a lot more to it than the story you pick up from the old movie or wherever you're familiar with the story from. I just feel like there's a lot more complexity. You get some of the story from the monster's perspective. And yeah, it was really interesting. But even reading through it the first time, I felt like I would get a lot more out of it on a reread. So it's definitely one I want to pick up in the future and reread again. Because I feel like I missed a lot. And I feel like now that I kind of have a better idea of what to expect going into it, that I will enjoy it much more on a second read. The second prompt was Arithmancy, and for that you're supposed to read a book outside of your favorite genre. I read Firefight by Brandon Sanderson. This is book 2 in the Reckoners trilogy, and this is a sci-fi. I do enjoy sci-fi, but it's not my favorite genre. And this is superhero, more or less. Superhero sci-fi, and superheroes are definitely not in my wheelhouse. But I enjoy Brandon Sanderson, and I've really been enjoying this trilogy. I've completed the trilogy now. But this was book 2, and this follows a group of people called the Reckoners. Their goal is to take down the epics, which are humans, more or less, with supernatural abilities. So they have special powers, and they're generally not nice people. So the Reckoners are kind of battling the epics. And it's a lot of fun. There's a lot of humor. There's David, the main character, is a lot of fun to follow. There's a lot of good laughs in these, and I really, really enjoy them. They're very accessible. If Brandon Sanderson intimidates you, his high fantasy intimidates you, this is maybe a better place to start. This is YA, so it's good for younger ones too. And yeah, it was really, really good. All right, the third prompt was Astronomy, and for that you were supposed to read a book when it was dark outside. So over the course of 2 nights, I read Thornhill by Pam Smyth. And it looks huge, but it's mostly pictures. I'm not even sure I'd use the term graphic novel. If you're familiar with Brian Selznick, who half the story is told in pictures and half in words, that's what this is. So you have a dual timeline happening. You have journal entries from 1983, and then you have the modern day portion is all told in pictures here. And this follows 2 young girls. The 1983 is a girl who lives in this home. It's an orphanage, more or less. It's where girls stay kind of between their foster homes. And it's not a good situation. This girl is bullied a lot. There's just a lot of drama. She's not treated very well. And she's pretty traumatized. And then you have a girl in modern day who moves into the house that's next door to this facility, which is now abandoned. It's all overgrown. And this girl is seeing things over on the property. So you have these two things kind of simultaneously happening, and then, yeah, it goes dark at the end. So this, though technically I think this is supposed to be middle grade, or maybe YA. The girls are young. They've got to be 11, maybe. But it does get pretty dark, and the end definitely went a lot darker than I was anticipating, so just be aware of that. However, I do recommend reading this at night, so it fit that prompt really well. But yeah, there's some heavy topics in here for sure. All right, the next prompt was Care of Magical Creatures, and for that you're supposed to read a book that has a creature with a beak on the cover. And I read a middle grade for that one. I read Finding Serendipity, which you can see on the cover has a crow over here. So that's a creature with a beak. This is a book that I had out for middle grade March that I never got to, and I really enjoyed it. It is an adventure fantasy book. We follow this young girl whose name is Tuesday McGillicuddy. And her mother is missing, and so she goes looking for her mother and ends up kind of in the land of stories, more or less. And it's a really fun story, a lot of adventure, just a lot of very whimsical. Yeah, I really enjoyed this a lot. It's got a great little dog companion whose name is Baxter with 2 R's at the end. I believe there are 2 more books in the series, which I definitely want to get my hands on when the library opens up again. The next prompt was Charms, which was a book with a white cover, and for that I read Elantris by Brandon Sanderson. If you've been watching, you know I've been on a Brandon Sanderson binge this year, and that's going to continue. So I picked up Elantris, which I believe was his first published novel. Elantris is high fantasy. It is set in a world where people can become kind of godlike, and when they do, they are sent to this city called Elantris, where they live, and people come to them for advice and for healing and for wisdom. But then something goes terribly wrong, and everyone in Elantris starts dying. And so there's a lot of political intrigue in this. There's a lot of kind of theological conversations, religion and faith. There's a little bit of romance. In fact, I really, really liked the romance in this. It's subtle. It's definitely a subplot, but I really liked the romance in here. And yeah, it read fast. It does not feel like a 550-page book. I read it in 5 or 6 days, but I really, really enjoyed this. It's Sanderson. What else do you need to know? That's pretty much all you need. Pick it up, read it. All right, the next prompt was for Defense Against the Dark Arts, and that was a book set at the sea or coast. I picked up another middle grade that I had on hand for middle grade March that I didn't get to. This is Our Castle by the Sea by Lucy Strange. This is a World War II historical fiction middle grade. And we followed this family who are lighthouse keepers, which I thought was a really interesting take on that time period. So it's 2 sisters and their parents that live in this lighthouse, and their mother is German, came over from Germany years and years previously, but is accused of being a spy and sending information back to Germany. So you've got that drama. You've got just the whole drama of being a lighthouse keeper, and what does that mean? What do you do with the lighthouse during the Blitz, during blackouts? How do you do your job when you can't do your job? So that was really interesting. It deals with with Dunkirk and that part of World War II. So there were some really interesting elements to this that I hadn't seen done in middle grade before, and I thought that was really interesting. It's really well written. Just again, a good family story with some good history mixed in there, and yeah, I really enjoyed it. Next up was Divination, and that was to use a random number generator on your TBR. So I numbered all the books that I had out from the library, which was a lot. Our library is closed, like everyone else's right now. So I just numbered all those and had that, did the random number generator with the library books. And I ended up with Watch Hollow by Gregory Fanaro, which is interesting because I probably would not have picked this one on my own. It probably would have gotten returned to the library without being read, because it definitely has some fall Halloween vibes to it, just looking at it. this was such a good book. I really liked this one. You follow a brother and sister and their father. Their father he works on clocks and fixes clocks, and so they're hired by this wealthy man to go out to this estate to fix this. This estate has been abandoned and is kind of run down, and the father needs to go fix this clock because the clock kind of runs the house. It provides electricity for the house, and it needs to be fixed. So they go spend their summer more or less at this estate. But obviously there's mystery, there's fantasy elements to this. You've got some talking animals, which is always great. You have kind of a dark, mysterious figure who's controlling things. I thought this book was really creative and really fantastic. It also has a sequel, which I'm looking forward to getting to someday. But I would definitely recommend this one as well. I had some really good luck with the middle grade. For herbology, the prompt was a book the title starts with an M. And for that, I pulled out a reread, Momo by Michael Ende. Michael Ende is better known for The Never-Ending Story. That's his most well-known work. But this is one a friend had recommended to me a few years back that I picked up and read and enjoyed, and I had wanted to reread it. So I picked it up again, and I enjoyed it so much more the second time. This is such a great book. We follow this little girl whose name is Momo, and it's kind of a dystopian world. She lives alone, and the community around her kind of helps take care of her. They feed her and check on her, and she has this gift for listening, and she just listens to people, and everyone talks to her, and everyone gets their problem solved just because they're just talking to her, and they talk through these things because she takes the time to listen. And this book deals a lot with the concept of taking time and being kind of in the moment. But then these gray men come along that are trying to steal time. They're telling everyone that they can save time, like in a bank. They can save up their time, and then they can do things with this time that they've saved. But basically what happens is everyone just hurries through everything trying to save all this extra time, but then they never see all this extra time that they're saving. And yeah, so then people start changing, people start disappearing, and Momo goes hunting for people, and she ends up, it's more complex. I'm making it sound really simplified, but it's more complex than that. But she, figures out how to save people and how to get them to stop rushing through everything and saving time. Why am I doing air quotes so much today? Anyway, you should definitely pick this one up. I really, really enjoyed it. Next up was History of Magic, and for that you were supposed to read a book featuring witches or wizards. And I picked up Equal Rights by Terry Pratchett. This is part of the Discworld series, which I am slowly reading through, but it's been like a year since I read one. So I picked up this, which follows the first female wizard, at least in this world. Wizards are only men. And this baby girl gets given powers by mistake. And so she grows up and is wanting to be a wizard. And so this deals with gender inequality in a very funny way. I really, really like this book. I've only read 3 or 4 Discworld books. This has been my favorite so far. I thought it was very clever and humorous and just a lot of fun to read. Next up was Muggle Studies, and that was to read a book from the perspective of a Muggle, or basically a contemporary. So I picked up another reread for that, and that was Fangirl by Rainbow Rowell. I honestly just reread this because I was deciding whether I actually wanted to keep it or not. I'm sure you know what this is about. This follows a teenage girl who, her life up to this point has been, she has a twin sister, and they together write fan fiction for Simon Snow, which is more or less Harry Potter. And then they go off to college. And so it's coming of age, coming to adulthood, I guess. Finding her new self kind of apart from her sister, dealing with family drama, dealing with boy drama, dealing with some pretty severe social anxiety. And yeah, it's a sweet story. It's enjoyable to read, but I don't think I'll ever read it again. I'm not going to keep it. There's parts of it that are really cute. There's parts of it that are kind of meh, and there's parts of it that I don't think were dealt with particularly well or thoroughly. I think some things, when I got to the end, I was kind of like, wait, wasn't that supposed to wrap up better? Or, have some closure, and it didn't. And yeah, it's it's enjoyable read, but it's not something I'm going to return to. It's not enjoyable enough that I think I'm going to return to it again. All right, we're almost there. 2 more. So for potions, you were to read a book under 200 pages, and for that I read The First 4 Years by Laura Ingalls Wilder. I've been rereading the Little House series, and this is the last one. And this follows Laura in her first 4 years of marriage. And it's not great. Like, the story is interesting, but this was incomplete. Laura Ingalls Wilder didn't finish the book, so it was finished by someone else. So it very much feels like just little snapshots of the big events instead of kind of the details and the in and out of the day-to-day. And it just breezes over a lot of things really quickly. And Laura feels like a very different character in this book than she does in the other books. And yeah, I'm glad I read it. I'm glad I finished the series, finished the series, because it was a reread. But yeah, and just all in all, I don't think this book is nearly as good as the rest of the series. And then the very last prompt was Transfiguration, and that was to read a book that features shapeshifting. So I read the original book that features shapeshifting. I don't know that I can say that. But I read the original Beauty and the Beast fairy tale by this French person. I'll put the name on the screen because there's no way I can pronounce it. And this was good. I liked it a lot. It's very different than the movie, which I anticipated, but it's like significantly more different than I anticipated. There's pretty much nothing other than the basics of you have a beast and a beautiful girl who goes to live in his castle. That's pretty much all that's the same as the fairy tale that's more familiar to us from the Disney movie or whatever version you've watched. But it was really interesting. I found Beauty a little obnoxious, to be honest, but she grew on me. She definitely changes and grows through the story. But I really enjoyed reading the original fairy tale and would recommend it for sure. So that is it, the 12 books that I read for the O.W.L.S Readathon. I'll have another wrap-up part 2, probably next week, I'll talk about the rest of the books I read this month. Please let me know down below if you participated in the O.W.L.S and what career you're aiming for. I'd love to know. I haven't decided, again, if I'm going to participate in August or what direction I'm going to take. So yeah, I'd love some input on what you're doing. But that is it for today. Thank you for watching.